And so moving on, in honor of Black History Month, we announced last month that we were going to do something a little different. And we will hold off on regular business this month until next month. But we wanted to invite 3 guests to discuss their recalled memories of their life in Lewis or while growing up in Lewis. And we will go ahead and introduce those special guests. And we're going to hold off on public questions and comments and questions in the chat until the end. We're going to give the opportunity for the 3 special guests to discuss a little bit about their life in Lewis uninterrupted. And hopefully Miss Kitty will be able to join us if she hasn't done so yet. And so we'll go ahead and move on. And I had her as our first special guest, but we'll slide her down a little bit. And we'll go ahead and move on to Miss Janet Mall Martin, who has grown up, was born and raised here in Lewis. And we will go ahead and move on to Miss Janet. We're going to give you a little free rein to talk about, what you want to talk about. And we know there's, good things and there's not so good things as growing up. So, and we want you to be honest and just give us and our audience a taste of how it was when you were growing up here in Lewis.
Thank you so very much, Trina, for first of all, the invite. And some of you I know, and others of you I'm going to have an opportunity to get to know, but I am excited about being able to be a part of your meeting this evening and to come in and to share some things with you during this Black History Month. I will say this, I see it as American history, and Black history is a part of American history. And so therefore I don't celebrate Black history just in the month of February. I celebrate it every day of my life. And mainly because I carry it with me every day of my life because I am a Black female. And so as Trina said, I was actually born in Wilmington, Delaware. My father worked in Wilmington in the railroad and came down to Lewis because this is where he was born. He was born in Lewis and raised in Lewis. And so I actually started first grade in Lewis. So my first 6 years were up in Wilmington and then down here, but I call myself a local, and I say born and raised in Lewis. I spent a great deal of time, I was just sitting here thinking, I lived on Burton Avenue, and some of you may remember there used to be a farm, some of you may, used to be a farmhouse there on Burton Avenue where, if you can remember Mr. Tom McLean, so some of you may know that area there. I'm not sure exactly who lives there now, but I spend a great deal of my time living there. My family, my mother's side of the family, who was a Chisholm, owned that property. Then I also had the opportunity of living on DuPont Avenue, where I attended the DuPont Elementary School from grades 1 through 6. It is now the Fred Thomas building. During that time, we had 2 classes in one room. So first and second grade was in one room, third and fourth, fifth and sixth was in the other room. So I spent my early formative years there at DuPont Avenue. Then we lived for some years on Savannah Road, actually 2 doors down from the fire department, across the street from the old Lewis movie theater. That was quite an interesting time living there, and then we moved to West 4th Street, where the rest of my time and our family lived on West 4th Street. When I was telling Trina about growing up in Lewis, I saw it during the time, and Bill and I lived around the corner, a couple of streets over from one another, and truly he and I may even both have different thoughts and memories of what it was like growing up in Lewis. But I just remember it being a close-knit community. However, I also remember being in my grandfather's home, Percy Mall, and his wife was named Otelia Mall, and many other people in Lewis knew her as Tot Mall. She made lots of pone and cakes and all sorts of good sweets. And of course, she did domestic work also. But I can remember my grandfather saying to us, when you go up on 2nd Street, be mindful of what you say and what you do. If you're walking on the sidewalk and you see anyone coming toward you, step off the sidewalk, let them pass. Don't cause any trouble. Don't cause any trouble. So that kind of stuck with me. And so even though it wasn't said out loud, there was a certain type of, you knew what you were supposed to do when you went past 4th Street. So 4th Street, then 3rd Street, 2nd Street, and Canal Avenue. But you knew that when you went up on 2nd Street, which was where the shops were and the restaurants were, that you had to make sure that you were doing what you were supposed to be doing. I can remember going up on 2nd Street because if we wanted to get a hamburger, or if we wanted French fries, or we're just out walking, if we were going in the summer, walking to the beach, we would go up on 2nd Street. We would look in the front windows, but we knew we could not go through those doors. So we would have to go around to the side street, knock on the door, and someone would come from the kitchen crew and would ask us what did we want, and they'd have their little pad, and we'd tell them we'd want hamburgers and French fries or soda, and they would write it down. We'd give them our money, and then we would wait until it was done, and they would hand it back to us, and we'd either skip on back down to 4th Street or DuPont Avenue, or we'd go to what you may know as Ship Carpenter Square. That was our playground. That was where we would have major parades and affairs out there. I can remember Mayor Otis Smith, a wonderful individual who made sure that we had swings and sliding boards, the equipment out there in that field for us to play in. And it was also a time when, doing back then, my growing up, we'd had a community organization called the Jolly Jills. And they would always put on a major, especially May Day parade, and William C. Jason Comprehensive High School Band would march down the streets and would make their way to what is now Ship Carpenter Square. But I drive through, and I do come into Lewis even now, and I look over there and I see all the houses that was there. But I also remember seeing so many of my friends playing in that field and having a really nice time. As I said, I spent my time, my formative educational years, 1st grade through 6th grade at the DuPont Avenue School. And my greatest desire was to go to William C. Jason Comprehensive High School. That was the only high school for African Americans at that time. And so the time came, and I believe it was 67, I believe it was, Bill, 67, 68, that we had the option of going to either Lewis High School or William C. Jason Comprehensive High School. There was no way, I didn't even have to think about it. I knew where I was going, even though it meant getting up very early in the morning to catch that bus that Trina's grandmother drove, as we would catch that bus early in the morning to ride that bus. And I mean, that bus was crowded to the point that as he was making his trip down Route 9 to Georgetown, people would have to stand because he had to pick up so many people on the way to Georgetown for us to go to school. But that was a glorious time. Coming back after that 1 year, and I only had that 1 year before they closed Jason, and it is now, you know it as Del Tech. Coming back then and attending Lewis High, I will have to say, and Bill, as I said, may find it different. Trina didn't go through it, but it was probably the worst time of my educational career, the worst time. I left a place called William C. Jason Comprehensive High School, and even DuPont Avenue, where I was told that you are somebody. You can do great things. You're going to make my side of the desk. My fifth grade teacher, Mary Holmes Jones, told me that. She says, you're going to make my side of the desk. And she instilled that in me. And I must admit, there are quite a few of my family members who are educators. And so that was a natural course for me to follow. But I always knew at an early age that I wanted to teach. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And whenever I could grab them together, I was teaching, playing school. But as I said, when I went to Lewis High School, I left Jason from an atmosphere and a feeling of knowing that I am somebody, that I can be somebody, and I'm going to go on to do great things, to a time where, in my mind, that was all dashed with integration. That I found myself one of only, maybe the only one in my classes, African American. And to this day, I am 68 years old. And to this day, I still carry the trauma of that time. And I'll just share this with you because I do this when I speak about it, because I don't think people realize that trauma can last a lifetime. And I was the only African American in this math class that was taught by the best or the most liked math teacher at Lewis High School at that time. And I can remember having a question, and I raised my hand. In that entire class period, it got to the point where I had to put my other hand under my arm, because I was never called on. To her, I was invisible. That was the first time in my life that I realized that, I'm not being seen. I wasn't heard. And that, for me, destroyed my self-esteem, because I felt as though I was in a place where I was not wanted. And I remember going out of the class and sitting outside the door and crying. And one of the other students finally came out, a female student. She put her arms around me and she said, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'll have to admit, that was the first time I'd ever gotten an F, and I got an F every marking period in that algebra class. And so I kind of shied away from math. I refused to do any math, and I was in the academic track at Lewis High School at that point in time, and because I knew I wanted to teach. That's what I wanted to do. So I needed to be there. But I felt so bad, and that hurt me so bad and affected me so bad. I changed from the academic track to business. So when I graduated from Cape Henlopen High School in 1970, the very first graduating class for Cape, I was taking shorthand at 100 words a minute and typing 80 words a minute. But even though I graduated that, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. Business teaching was not what I wanted. I didn't want to be somebody's secretary, because that's what the guidance counselor told me I should think about doing. You should be a secretary. But I was determined that I was not going to be anyone's secretary. I was going to achieve the goal that I wanted. And I ended up going to Del State. I didn't stay at Del State. I ended up in North Carolina at a private college in North Carolina. But I got my degree and I came back. But that was the first time in that college that I was able to take a math class. And when anybody mentioned math, I did not hear doors slamming. I want to tell you the trauma that I experienced. That anytime math was told to me, even when I was at Del State, I would literally hear doors slam in my mind. I hated that. But when I went down to school at college in North Carolina, I was in a class of 7 people. And for the first time in a long time, in a higher level math class, I received an A. And I got my degree. I came back to Cape because I was determined to let them know I came through the system and I made it. Even when I was told I wasn't going to make it, I made it. I made it. And would you know, my very first teaching job was in the Cape Henlopen School District. And I spent 40 plus years in this district, never had a job in any other district, never wanted a job in any other district, because I was determined that I would not let happen to any child, no child, it didn't matter what color they were. I wanted every child that I came into contact with to know that they could be somebody. And with perseverance and with dedication and with goals set in mind, you can achieve and be anything that you want to be. So I
Miss
not only,
Janet,
yes.
Miss Janet, you know, that is very powerful of what you are saying and expressing to us. I think that all of us felt exactly what you were feeling, the way you were expressing it. It was very powerful. We thank you. We're gonna circle back to you.
Oh, that's okay.
We're going to move to our next person. I think we have Miss Kitty on the line right now. Miss Kitty, can you if you're on mute, could you share your experience with us? I don't think we're hearing you, Miss Kitty. Are you off of mute? All right, we're going to put a marker right there, and we're going to hit Miss Deborah Robinson. Deborah Robinson is very special to me. She's my sister, and although Deb, you weren't born here, but I think you were born in Philadelphia, but mostly raised here. So.
You know what? Good evening, everybody. I am so happy to be here. And it's obviously my sister doesn't know very much about me because I was born and raised in Lewis. And so I was born at home with a midwife. And it was, so for some odd reason, I remember her name because I was told it was Miss Hazard, because African-Americans didn't go to the hospital. They weren't allowed to. And so everybody was really born at home, pretty much. If you had a major problem that required hospitalization, you were allowed to, everyone was in the basement of the BB hospital. So that was my early start in Lewis. I have a lot of very good memories of being raised in Lewis. It was I guess a Mayberry RFD type of environment, because it was a small town and everybody knew everybody else and everybody was related to everybody else. So it was nowhere that you could go that somebody wasn't family. And it took that whole village to raise our children. I did say I had to only affirm the things that Janet said, but when she went to that DuPont Avenue school, it was called Lewis Junior High School, because I went there too. And I also had Miss Mary Holmes Jones as a teacher. We had 3 teachers, Mrs. Davis, Jones, and Mr. Thomas. Mrs. Jones was my 6th grade teacher, and Mr. Thomas, Fred Thomas, was my 7th and 8th grade teacher. So I'm very familiar with those people. At that time, school, of course, was segregated. And yes, we got a lot of hand-me-down materials, and they were definitely not the very best. But we had very dedicated teachers who used whatever they were given and expanded on it so that we could have the very best education possible. They went above and beyond to make sure that we didn't miss anything because of the deficiencies that we were allotted. They exposed us to as much as was available in our circumstances. They went above and beyond always. And they had each individual child was their responsibility. If you misbehaved in school, your parents knew it before you, and they didn't have telephones and cell phones. The whole neighborhood pretty much knew it before you got home. And if you had to get a yardstick across your backside, it was no, your parents would say, well, you must have deserved it. So that school, we had Mrs. Barrett, who was our dietitian and cook, and everybody had a hot lunch every day. So it was a lot of good things and good experiences. We also used the school building for our social activities afterwards. We had the school dances and the plays, and it was a part of the center of our life. So, and as I said, the people in the school carried out into the rest of the community. We had the school also where we had teachers for art and music come in to supplement the teachings that we did not have. You know, they were additional extracurricular courses. And when we need medical care, they had the dentist and the eye doctor and the school nurse come in on a regular basis in order to make sure that our children did have some of the needs met by the community. The other part of Lewis I remember is our church activities. We had basically 2 African-American churches in my early years, and that was St. George and St. Paul. And you either went to one or the other of the churches. Eventually, because of the families that were living in Bunkers Row, another church, Friendship Baptist Church, was established for that population, which later moved into Lewis. Now, people may not know what Bunkers Row is, but when the fishing industry had was prominent in Lewis, it had families that came that followed the fishing industry, and they were they built houses, little small houses to take care of the various families that lived there. And that area was called Bunkers Row. And many of my friends lived there, and I'm sure that someone who has better memories of it than I do. But that was one part of our community. Now, I know we also talked about Lewis Beach. Lewis Beach was, for us, it was Lewis Beach, but it was the segregated section of Lewis Beach. We didn't have any, we were just not allowed to go to the beach in where the white people went, because I don't know what us bathing in the same ocean would have done to the water, but we had our own area. And it had a pavilion. It did not have a concession stand. So if we had to, we would bring our food to the beach. We always had picnics, bonfires, marshmallow roasts, weenie roasts. So that was a major place for families to hang out, particularly on Sunday afternoons. And as I said, there was a pavilion and a lot of social activities and meetings and organizational things went on in that pavilion. I also know that we had church services there on times. I remember being there on an Easter Sunday morning for sunrise service, and it was very cold, but it was packed with people because everybody came to the sunrise service. They had baptisms in the ocean, and so it was a hub of our social life on the beach. My grandfather, Tarina's grandfather, Marshall Lockwood, he was the unofficial mayor of the Black community, and he would organize 4th of July activities. We would have the three-legged race, the egg race, the pie eating contest, and all of those activities for families on that on that beach. Years later, someone put a restaurant up there, and that was Johnny Walker's. And with the restaurant there, it became the place to be. People would come from far and wide to go to Johnny Walker's restaurant. And basically it was just a restaurant, but they had an area that was attached to it that live music would be there every week. We had bands coming from far and wide, and everybody came to Johnny Walker's to dance and party. And it was the hub. So those were the centers of our social life, other than the church and the beach, the school. And so those were the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm open for any questions and anybody who wants to talk about it after me. But when you think of, I know that Janet talked about our segregation. I know that one of the things that was paramount in my mind is we wanted to shop downtown at any of the stores on 2nd Street, Braunstein's dress store, Fox department store. And if we saw something that we liked, we weren't allowed to try it on. We just had to buy it and hope that it fit, because Black people weren't allowed to try stuff on. We went to Bill Clifton's newsstand, which had a soda fountain in it. We were not allowed to sit at the soda fountain and order our ice cream or sodas. As Janet said, we had to go to the employees area, or Clifton's didn't have that, but we could stand at the end of the counter. But that was par for the course. At the movie, we had to sit upstairs in the balcony. And we often got in trouble for throwing popcorn down on the people on the first floor. Yeah, we lived in a very segregated area. We had our own world, but we were self-sufficient in our own world. Janet talked about the Jolly Jills. They were the ones that did the fundraising to provide the playground equipment. Yes, Otis Smith deeded the land for a nominal fee to the community for a certain period of time. The Lewis, that basically was the Happy Day Club sponsored baseball team, had many, many games out there. I mean, that was a big part of our social life. And many of our Little League or minor league players went on to great baseball fame, but they had their start there in Lewis on that field. So some of the names, particularly Bill Pollock, may be more familiar with than I am, but that's where we started. That was that game that came every weekend. Everybody was out there and they wanted to be seen on the scene. So that was the kind of activities that we had. And
Deb, I'm going to stop you right there.
All right.
And we'll circle back around to you. But I think Miss Kitty is now unmuted, and we'll hear some of her memories. We appreciate all of the information that you gave us, and I'm sure that it generated even more between you and Janet. Now we have Miss Kitty, and I'm sure she has a wealth of information as well. Go ahead, Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty?
Do you hear me?
Yes. Go right ahead.
You do?
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Thank you all so much. You know, listen, when you're 84 years old, it's hard for you to get in this technology.
We understand.
Listen, I listened at everything that Janet and Debbie said, and every word was complete. I am 84, lived in Lewis, born and reared right on West 4th Street. in my grandparents' home, 311 West 4th Street. So I lived there practically all of my childhood life. I moved out of Lois when I became an adult. I had a beauty shop in Lois. I had my own beauty shop in Lois on Park Avenue. And listen, years ago, and you all, the younger ones don't remember, but years ago, West 4th Street, starting when you cross Park Avenue, the ending of West 4th Street was not even paved. It was a dirt road. The only paved streets was Park Avenue and up 3rd Street and 2nd Street. So 4th Street, when you crossed over, it was not paved at all. And they did not pave it until later years. And I think when they started paving it, it was I think that we were getting ready to go into the 7th grade. And as she said, out to DuPont, I guess that's what the school, it was called Lois Junior High School. On my certificate, it's Lois Junior High School. It is not DuPont or anything like that. It's Lois Junior High School. And Mr. Brown was the principal when we attended that school. We had a lot of fun back to Lois High School. They had a band. They had their own music department. Miss Holmes, she was a teacher, but then she cooked us meals. And my grandfather, Joe Seymour, Senior, he used to take care of the furnace. He used to be down in the steps and take care of the furnace for the school. There is a lot of history in Lois. And it was called now Ship Carpenter Square. That's where my mother and father's house was. It moved it there. It was a CC camp building, and they moved that house there. First it was a restaurant, and then it became my mother and father's home. And we lived there until I was grown, until my mother and father passed. They lived there. And but mostly all of my family lived on West 4th Street and Park Avenue.
Miss Kitty, did they have was there a school on Park Avenue that all the African Americans went to?
Yes, there was a school on Park Avenue. That's where my mother and them went. It was up the Stokeleys.
Right.
Right. Used to have a house. Ben Stokely, he and his wife used to have a house. But before they moved in that house, that was a school for my parents and a lot of the older, that's where their school was until they built Lois Junior High School. And so
where was your shop at, Kitty?
My shop was there was some a row of homes my grandfather used to own right there on Park Avenue and the corner of Park Avenue and West 4th Street, right there. It was three apartments, and my shop was in the Inn apartment that was right there on Park Avenue. Right. I mean, on Park Avenue and West 4th Street.
Now, I heard that some part of that street or something was called Chamomile. Does anybody know?
That is Park Avenue. That's the up part of Park Avenue. Now I understand the reason why they called it that was they used to have merchant marines or something. They used to come and work on their boats on part of that lot where it's called Ship Carpenter Square, but it only was the part that was up the street, right across from Mr. Jimmy Thompson. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And then
and your mother was part of the Jolly Jills, wasn't she?
Yeah, my mom. Yeah, she was part of Jolly Jills, and the Jolly Jills did a lot for the young people in Lloyd. Did a lot for us because they had different socials and of course she said, Jason Band used to come, and they would parade on 2nd Street and downtown and over by the museum and then they ended up down in the field. So it is a lot of history in Louis that because we didn't even and you know, right there where the Happy Day Club was, before it became a bar, years before it became a bar, that was our clinic. When we were young, the state nurse, because we wasn't allowed to go to the hospital or the doctors or nothing like that, so the state nurse would come there, and they had an office there. That's where we used to go and get our shot or get examined and everything. That's where the clinic was before it became before it became a Happy Days Club or anything like that. Yeah. And I guess at the Happy Day Club, they brought a lot of entertainers. When Henry Hill owned the Happy Day Club, there was a lot of entertainers that came to Louis. Yep, a lot of entertainers.
Who was your favorite?
Who was my favorite?
Yes.
That they had there? Oh, let me see, because we I can't even think now who my favorite was. Because I used to like to dance, so I was always over there when I was of age. So yeah, when I was of age, I always was over there. And then when we wasn't of age, we still was there, looking in the window. Yeah. But I love my town and my city of Louis. There has been a lot of things happen, and no, we could not go into the restaurants and things, but we enjoyed Louis. We had our own fun, and of course, the Donahues lived right up there on West 4th Street. He would always come down. They had the store, and that's where we had to. Right there at that store, that's where we had to meet our bus to go to Jason.
Right.
That's where we met the bus. Oh, I thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Miss Kitty, we're going to come back to you, but I wanted to ask Janet one thing, because she had, in talking to Miss Janet, she had mentioned at one time the Klan had tried to come to town. Janet, could you kind of give a little summary of that?
Oh, yeah.
I can seem to remember, as you said, there was a time when there was a lot of uproar going on. You know what was going on in Cambridge and Snow Hill, all around in that area. And the Klan was looking to come into Louis to burn a cross. And from what I can remember, Mayor Otis Smith has said, oh no, we don't have any problems here in Louis, and we're not going to have you coming in causing any trouble. And from what I can remember.
Oh, you went mute, Miss Janet. Miss Janet, you went mute. We can't hear you.
You can't.
We can't hear you, Miss Janet.
Huh?
We can't. Okay, stay right there. Start over when you said that. What Mayor Otis Smith said, okay. Because we lost you for a minute.
Oh, okay. Was that he had said that that he did not want the Klan coming into Louis because we didn't have any problems in Louis. He was not going to have them coming to disturb the community, and so he had the guard or to be stationed to keep them from coming into the town of Lewis. So that's what, and I can, and let me, if you don't mind, while I'm here, if I can say to Debbie, it's been a long time since I've seen you, and it's so good to see you. But you said those things that I would want to say about Lewis, even though I had my experience as far as education is concerned. Lewis was our grounding place for us. It was a community.
Yes.
Yes. Everybody, whether they, and you all, everybody looked out for one another. And
yes, they did.
we knew that if we did something on DuPont Avenue, everybody knew about it.
Yes, that's it.
Everybody is, you know, when they say the old African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And when I look back on my childhood, it took the village of our community to raise everyone. And I use myself as an example, Bill Colick as an example, Trina as an example, Debbie, because of the nurturing that we got from our community. We were able to, despite what went on around us, to go on and achieve those things that we knew that our families wanted for us and those who taught us wanted for us and as a community. And so when I go back to Lewis every now and then, and I'm going to be honest with you, that's not the neighborhood that I grew up in. I have to try to remember what was in those places. And so some of you may be able to go back to your communities, go back home, as they say. But I can't go back home. My parents are gone. Most of my family, they're gone. The community is gone. There's only maybe 2 or 3 or 4 families left in what was a vibrant community, And we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot as far as that area is concerned, 4th Street, Park Avenue. But we've held on in us the memories, so we have those memories, and we had the experience of growing up.
And Miss Janet, that is one of the purposes of the Lost African American Heritage Commission, is to remind us so that we never forget the legacy that Lost was, and that's what one of our missions is to strive to always remember and create memories ongoing, so that those who even come and visit, it may not be what it used to be, but we're going to remember what it was. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat, because I'm not looking at the chat right now. I don't know if Miss Anne Marie can see any questions in the chat, or if anybody has anything, or any of the commissioners have anything to say. But now's the time.
I have a question.
Can I say this? My best girlfriend, Elizabeth Ann Ball, is the oldest. She is the oldest Black lady born and reared in Lewis that is still living in Lewis.
Oh.
And we're going to have a good talk with her as soon as we can, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so.
She is the oldest. Yep.
Miss Rachel.
Yeah, this is for Janet. Were you related to Bob and Pearl?
Yes, I'm their niece. Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I taught in Georgetown in 67, 68 with Bob and Pearl Ball.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
Wow.
Good evening.
Hi, Reverend.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
We are doing good. Oh, it's been such a wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank God.
Was there any other anything in the chat, Miss Anne Marie, from any attendees?
So a lot of it was a little trying to do the technical support to get Miss Kitty on. But we had Wayne Paskins said he was so glad to hear the experiences during the times he remembers. Coming to Lewis from Rehoboth was really like going out of town. Rachel had asked where Bunker Row was located. and Deborah responded that it was located where the ferry depot is.
Yeah.
And Alicia Jones indicated that she had to leave. Mr. Paskins also indicated that he had to leave, but
that's Miss Wayne Paskins.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is she not a woman? That's
Yes,
not
she's a
Miss
woman.
Wayne is.
So it's
That's not Mrs. Haskins.
okay. I'm sorry. And now I see that Miss Collick's telling me, but I got there too late, so I apologize. So that's what we have in the chat, and then we have Zita Dressner has the hand up. Oh, and she wants to know when Miss Kitty left Lewis.
Oh, I left Lewis in 1968.
Hi, Miss Kitty.
Hi.
How are you?
I am great. I am great. I left Lewis and I moved to Annapolis, Maryland, and then now I live in Dover, Delaware.
I'm unmuting Zita Dresner in case there were additional questions, because the hand is up. Were there any additional questions that you had? I guess not.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. This has just been so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Trina, for putting it all together. But what a great idea. It's fabulous. Thank you.
And Stephanie Pollock has her hand up.
All of us.
I'd like to thank Trina for getting this together, and then especially thank Janet and Miss Kitty and Debbie for coming on. I think Janet made a great point about American history, that our history is American history, and that we simply haven't been hatched. We come from great families, workers, great community people, and we've got to do everything we can to not devalue this great history, to not to make sure that it's not buried and covered up, because it's great history, and as you said, Janet, it's American history. It's important. It really is.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
Miss Trina, are you okay if I unmute Stephanie Pollock?
Yes, and I think I saw Mayor Becker had his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. So Miss Pollock, you should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say how much I enjoyed this, especially the story that Miss Janet told, because my mother is now deceased, but the stories that she told to me was like sitting and listening to my mom talk to her sisters about going up to 2nd Street and having to walk to the back door and going to Johnny Walker's. And so I greatly enjoyed this walk down memory lane. And also, Kitty, I enjoyed your stories, and Reverend Mo Martin, I enjoyed yours as well. I was born and raised in Lewis. I live in Milton now, but just enjoyed listening to all the history, and it was definitely a pleasure. So I thank you all for sharing your stories tonight.
Stephanie, who was your mother?
Barbara.
Okay, I knew your mother and your aunts very well, Jackie and Carolyn, and they were my friends. I hung out with them a lot.
Yeah, I remember Aunt Carolyn would always try to come and see you when she was home. So
yes. Yes.
And then we have Zita Dresner in the chat asked, did the Jolly Jills publish any kind of newsletter?
No, it wasn't that kind of an organization. It was basically a civic organization of the women in the town who got together to do fundraising for the community. So no, they weren't that formal enough to have a newsletter. And in Lewis, they didn't need a newsletter because they just yelled out the door to whatever. So, you know, they communicated otherwise, word of mouth.
That's great.
Can I follow up?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What I was, this is actually for Miss Perry, was your mother Elizabeth Stewart the president of the Jolly Jills?
She was, yeah.
I think she's on mute again.
Oh. Does anyone know? Anyone else know?
Yeah.
I'm sure she was.
I believe she was.
Well, many of our mothers were president at one point or another. I know that Mrs. Stewart, she used to be the town, what would you call it? She wrote the newspaper articles about the social life in Lewis. Anybody that came into Lewis found their name in the paper, and she would talk about all of the social events. She had a column, and everybody would read about it in the social registry whenever anything came out. Miss Elizabeth Stewart, Lib, as we called her, always wrote about it.
She also,
what's the name of the newspaper?
She had the Ways and Means Club. She had the Ways and Means Clubs from St. Louis Church, and all the women would gather to meet with her, and they also planned activities
yes, they did,
for the kids in the community at the school. So she did have the Ways and Means Club.
Was there, what was the newspaper that she had the column in?
The Coast Press.
Coast Press?
Yes.
She was well respected, and in my opinion, she was the town crier.
Yes.
Well respected.
We would call it the gossip columnist, but not quite that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was great.
I want to thank Stephanie Colick for her technical support in helping to get Miss Kitty unmuted, because she was the one who told us *6. So.
Takes a village.
I was thinking the same thing.
Just wanted to conclude that, you know, well, by rehashing our history, it's been a wonderful trip down memory lane for me. And I do know that our history is not dissimilar to the rest of Lewis, except that it's ours. And when you know what we went through, other people who lived in Lewis that were not in the African American community might have been going through the same kinds of things or similar things, but it finds out that, you know, our similarities are greater than our differences. And with that, we can form a more perfect union. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Debbie, this is Ted Becker. I couldn't say anything better than what you just said. Thank you very much. It's been a very informative presentation here. But I think the particular story about how the playground, which is now Ship Carpenter Square, was utilized, and the Jolly Jill's importance in the community is really a story that is not well known. And I'm very glad that you spent so much time talking about it. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend McCafferty, did you have any final words
I do apologize that I was late, but I do thank the participants, because as everyone has said, it's such an important thing, and we want to make sure that our history is preserved, because our history has not been so in the public eye, and it's just a great thing that this organization is doing to reclaim our history. So I thank you all, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I look forward to more such conversations.
Mr. Morgan, did you have anything you'd like to add? I think you're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Thank you. My dog has been barking, so I muted myself.
Okay.
No, I have nothing to add, but a great deal to thank everyone for. It was very informative and uplifting.
And Mr. Abbott?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
This has been a joy, and I know that we are in the process of overseeing and working together on gathering oral histories. But this is what it is, a joint history. It's not a segregated history. And I hope we will feel that more as we work towards this walking tour of African-American heritage in Lewis. And I thank you very much for including me in this, because this has been enlightening, just amazing. And Trina, thank you. I can see the smile on your face as each story, as each memory is shared. And that's been a gift in itself. I'm reading your face.
I can tell you that it has been a joy for me as well, because I'm not so far off from those dirt roads, and my history, a lot of my history, almost all of my life was around the church, which was St. George, AME Church, and all the memories there, and the bus trips and the women getting together, and YPD, which was the young people's department, and all in the choirs, and just so many things, and spending a lot of the wonderful time that I had with my father and the baseball team. I was daddy's girl, and I went everywhere he went. So if he traveled, I traveled. But all of those memories and hearing you all talk about them has been, my heart, I'm almost in tears. My heart is filled. And I think when I go back and review this video of this, I'll feel the same way. And I think that those volunteers that were on the meeting got enough information that they can even branch off, and don't be surprised if you all get some calls to do some more oral histories. And you may have to repeat what you said today, but I think it will help some of the volunteers to get to some of the information that they need to do some of the research.
Absolutely.
So Trina, are we allowed to use any of the recordings from tonight for any of our?
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, Miss Rachel, but not tonight. But I think we're going to get together and talk about how we're going to move forward with that.
Right. And permissions, etc. Right.
Yes. Because we got to get that waiver, signed and all that kind of stuff. So
it's all the tedium. Yes.
All right. I think, let's see. Let me look at the agenda. If there's no other public comments or questions, we're going to resume our regular commission meeting in March, which would be the third Thursday in March, which is March 18th at 6 p.m.
Great.
And Dr. McCafferty, can you adjourn us, please?
Oh, yeah. I'll take a motion to have the meeting adjourned.
Second.
I second.
No, I said I would take one. Someone would make
a motion.
Oh, thank you. All in favor, it has been, I'm sorry, I got something in my throat. All who are in favor of the meeting be adjourned, just show your support by saying aye.
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 Any noes? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. Love you.
Thank you, everybody. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Trina.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Everyone stay warm.
Yeah.